All right, sounds good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new crusade. Today, I'm going to be talking with Ryan, known online as TLM Ryan. He really appeared kind of in the spotlight about a month ago when he spoke with Anthony and Rob from Avoiding Babylon and went on there to go and do a debate about the very topic we're going to be talking about today. And that's where I had heard about him. I don't know if I followed him before that or not, probably, but now we've been talking since then. And he's also started his own little podcast since then as well. So, Ryan, do you want to make an introduction to everyone?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me on the show. As you said, my name is Ryan. I used to go by TLM Anon. I dropped anonymity to go on Avoiding Babylon. So now I'm TLM Ryan, just so that people don't get too confused as to who I used to be. Do you want just like a quick background on me or?
Yeah, well, because since we're going to be talking about the faith, so I guess maybe a general life background and then
Yeah,
general.
yeah. So I'm a convert, came in 2020. I won't really go into the details of that because it's not a conversion story. But it's rather interesting. I'd always wanted to be Catholic since I was very little. But finally, when you move out and you get a little more on your own, I decided to enter into the church in 2020. I am an attorney by trade, and I'm down in the Diocese of Middle Tennessee. So I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Excellent diocese. We have probably the most diverse liturgical experience you could probably find in any diocese. We have diocesan TLM. We have a full-blown Latin ad orientem novus ordo, Silo Malabar, which my church building shares with that. We have SSPX as well. Some pretty decent novus ordos, and then some kind of out there ones. So yeah, and I love looking into demographics. That's kind of a hobby of mine. I was a history major as well, so I have heavy research skills. I'm not like a qualified statistician at all. My math grades were terrible. That's why I had to become an attorney. But I can research, and I can research very well. And it was actually Kennedy Hall made a comment right after Pope Leo was announced as Pope, that Pope Leo, if he lives, God willing, a long life, he will witness the death of his own generation and have to face those repercussions of parish closures due to that. And that's all Kennedy said. And then I took that and ran with it because I really wanted to see, okay, how bad is this? And that's when I posted my findings on Twitter. It got some backlash from the usual Pope-splaining subjects, and it actually made me kind of angry, the denialism. So that's why I started speaking out on this and going on different shows. And I don't know. I don't want to say raising awareness because that's such a catchphrase, but that's my background very briefly, and that's why I've been talking about this particular.
Yeah. Had you been pushing? I don't remember the exact history. Had you been pushing the topic and then Avoiding Babylon agreed that they would host, or had they already said they wanted to do a debate and then you were just the person who was willing to take that side?
I got into a Twitter beef with Al Carbo, who is an anonymous Twitter account from Long Island, who basically said I was full of it and that the status in the church was healthy, which quite honestly just enraged me that someone could be that. Like, I don't know, like most things don't make me angry, but like complete blissful ignorance, particularly in the Catholic Church, which should have no room for blissful ignorance the last 60 years. It really irritated me. So I challenged him, and I was very accommodating. I said, look, let's debate this. And I understand some people hate debates. I said, if you don't want to do it, because he has a ton of followers, I said, name one of your followers as champion and I'll take them. And it was about 48 hours. I'm like, yeah, of course, nobody's going to do this. But 48 hours went by. But when I issued that demand, Rob from Avoiding Babylon saw it. So he invited us. He said, we can have it on AB. But then 48 hours go by. I'm like, yeah, there's no way. But the irony of it is, like, I only watch Avoiding Babylon and Return to Tradition. Return to Tradition is not the channel for that. And so when I issued that debate, I also issued a courtesy that I would go on any channel Al Carbo wanted. friendly
Mhm.
ground for him. I really wanted to do it. Like I wanted to entice him into it and make it as friendly as possible. So when Rob said, "Oh, you can come on Avoiding Babel," I'm like, "Well, it's not exactly like friendly ground to my opponent." But I was thrilled at the prospect because I love that channel. And it's unique to them. They don't do that either. But it'd be more appropriate than say with Anthony Stein's channel, which is more news related. So
Mhm.
48 hours go by, they finally get someone. I messaged Rob and I said, I don't know like how serious you were, but if you want to, like, I'm down, this guy's down. He was anonymous. I was anonymous at the time. Um,
Taffy said he clipped you, and you're going to be in the voting
oh
battle.
wow.
below this.
I've got to tune in for that. Taffy, thanks, man. Like it was my first time ever going live on Avoiding Babylon, so I like broke the Joe Rogan rule and read every comment. And Taffy said like one of the nicest things I've ever heard. So actually, Taffy, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't have even like launched my own channel because.
Well, there you go.
So thank you, Taffy.
Taffy. Awesome.
But yeah,
So
that's how it went down.
got it. And then we were talking about it a little bit, but I guess not to get too in depth generally, but what are your general feelings on how no need to like rehash everything, but just your general feelings on how the debate went?
It was very unique in that we all got blind. And by the way, like there were some mean comments towards Hoosier. I have no ill will towards this guy, so like please don't go after him for this. But there were a lot of mean comments um, because nobody knew he wasn't Catholic yet. I mean, it was kind of presumed anybody who would defend like the demographic health of the Catholic Church was at least Catholic. He's a
Mhm.
catechumen, and he really wanted to narrow things into just like stats so that it would be more excusable, I guess. And that was a fair way to do it from
Mhm.
his perspective. But like, that's not where Avoiding Babylon was going to keep it.
Mhm.
So then, and I mean, I think it was like within 5 minutes of the intros. Hoosier introduced himself first, and then Anthony kind of pressed, like, "Are you?" Because Anthony always wants to get out if you're a convert or a cradle,
Yeah.
and then it just kind of came out that he wasn't Catholic yet, and it was like, oh boy, like, I mean, I blame the people who put him in that position because nobody else would debate me than himself.
Mhm.
New, so he doesn't understand that that might have been like not the right move at that moment. So in terms of how the debate went, that was like it was. I mean, I was doing it live. Everything was like, okay, this is not. It already went off script right away. And I've debated professionally and recreationally before. So, and I knew it wasn't going to be the same standard, like 5 minute time, then you get, then rebuttal. But boy, it went sideways right away because of that.
Mhm.
In terms of like once things started going, I mean, I was extremely confident um, that I mean it was just reality,
Yeah.
uh, and it was like the reality. When I dug into the numbers, they were so abysmal that I was like, look, you can, because then Hoosier kind of shifted into, I'm not going to say it's a healthy state of the church. It's just not as bad as Ryan's saying. I'm like, dude, I was shocked at how bad it is. Like
Mhm.
I was pretty pessimistic about it from my anecdotal observations, but when I got into the numbers, it was worse than even someone with my inclination thought it was. So there's no way you're going to beat me on this. And at one point, he just admitted, he's like, "Oh, you're making me like argue against things that sound really good." And I literally said, "Well, then I've won." Like,
Mhm.
so I thought it went really well. In terms of like my angle was to win the debate.
Mhm.
To quote Kamala Harris, "It's a debate."
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of how it went as a conversation, I also thought it was very well, and that's kind of a credit to Anthony who guided it into, and we had agreed upon that it would morph into a discussion later on. And he,
Mhm.
I think around the 45-minute mark, kind of geared us off of arguing with each other into a conversation. So I thought it went well. Um, I don't know though. The audience actually, the market decides, the audience decides. I don't know
Mhm.
if it was well received or not. It seemed to be about a mixed bag in the live comments. Um,
Yeah.
Certainly something new for Avoiding Babylon. But I
Mhm.
enjoyed myself. Like I had fun, and I did not know if I would have fun.
Mhm.
I've been watching guys like you and Avoiding Babylon for so long, so it was a little surreal to kind of like in the green room when it's Rob and Anthony pop up and they're not talking to me through my iPhone while I'm
Mhm.
like laying in bed, trying to go to sleep. It's like, no, they're talking to me now. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of tell you my general feeling that I have based on my own experience, and then we can kind of segue into what the actual stats are, and then we can kind of, I guess, talk about what the general feeling seems to be online.
Okay.
Uh, the first thing, so when I decided to convert, I was living like in the middle of nowhere, and the I had a Catholic church walking distance from my house at the time, and so I was started walking there when I decided to convert, but I was going to move home, so I hadn't like actually I wasn't going to go talk to the priest or anything.
Right.
And at that point, I would say it was a pretty small parish, but I would guess that there was probably 20 people there on a given Sunday, split pretty evenly between like really old white people and then a mixture of different Hispanic people.
Hmm.
And then I would say that there was 3 children younger than me probably.
Okay.
And so I was basically like watching Pints with Aquinas and Trent Horn and watching Michael Knowles, and they're all talking about how amazing and beautiful the liturgy is. And I was like, I don't see it, but I'm just going to trust all the arguments make sense, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I finally moved home, because I live somewhere more densely populated normally, I was very quickly found other better options. And
Yeah.
even the Novus Ordos around here are a lot more packed. And some of them even have families with 6 or 7 children. And so I was it seemed then I was kind of like, okay, like that was probably just a bad location, you know?
Yeah.
And then I had seen the stats. There was that article that had come out. I don't remember if Trent Horn was dooming about the article or someone else was, but it was the one saying that for every however many leave, so many come in, and it was a really
Yeah.
bad number. And then recently, a lot of people have added nuance, basically saying that like, yeah, that's true, but all the boomers are going to die, and then once Gen Z is the main demographic, then the numbers are kind of just going to flip flop
Hmm.
supposedly. So that's kind of what my general knowledge level is at this point, and I don't really know much more than that. So maybe if you want to go ahead and get started, and then maybe I can just ask you questions if I think there's things that need to get fleshed out more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, all of this stuff starts with just kind of looking around and anecdotally looking at things. And then you start to ask yourself questions. So for me, I kind of did the same thing. I would look around at different parishes. I'm in a very healthy diocese. Like the diocese is actually growing, but you can see ones that won't be around in 5 years. Like it literally looks like a nursing home.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm not kidding. The one closest to where I live, I'll go there for confession and white hair everywhere. I'm like, I mean, and it's a big building. Like it's not just like the parish hall and the sacrament. It's like they've got conference rooms. I don't even know why, but like it's big. I'm like,
Mhm.
this costs a lot of money for just the air conditioning bill. Like, what is going to happen to this place? And then you go in other places, and it's like the children are just overflowing in the pews, and like they already need an addition just to
Mhm.
hold people.
Yeah.
So that's that, and then when you go on vacation, you get exposed to different things,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I noticed this pattern over and over. Generally speaking, the more reverent the liturgy, the healthier demographically the church was. And then when Pope Leo uh, came into the papacy, Kennedy Hall made a really short video about how there will be a sad irony that as the last pope who's a boomer, God willing, he lives to 15, 20 more years, he will oversee the church ushering out the boomers from its pews.
Mhm.
And he will have to deal with that. Um, and that got me thinking, okay, I need to start looking into these stats. And what I found not only confirmed everything you and I have seen on the ground, but it was so much worse than I thought.
Mhm.
So, and then I made a post about it. So I've got the math in front of me that went into that post.
Mhm.
I will give you the way my mind was working and what I found. So, I mean, I was literally on a walk and I just typed into my phone, how many boomers are there in the United States, right? How many boomers are Catholic? And then how many boomers are dying each year? Because they are getting to that. Like the oldest boomers, I think, are like, what, 80 at this point or something? Like they're beyond average life expectancy. So every year
Yeah.
they will, just on average, millions will die. So the math here is that 22% of Americans, American baby boomers are Catholic. Okay. So there's 15.8 million baby boomers um, who identify as Catholic. Okay. Um, overall, now this is not Catholic, just all boomers. Overall, each, and this could be interesting for people who are like waiting for them to get out of the workforce. If you want to know like how long that will take, 2.6 million boomers die each year. Now that's going to accelerate to 4 million a year by the year 2037. Um,
Hmm.
in the debate, Hoosier actually asked that. He's like, well, why is that? It's because they're just starting to die now. So as you compress more and more into the post life expectancy average, more are going to die.
Yeah, the older they get, the faster they'll die.
Right. So what does that mean for Catholics? So that means, and this is, taking the 22% of that. So 22% of 2.6 million is 600,000, roughly speaking. Each year, 600,000 Catholic baby boomers die. Now that's self-identification, so they're not all going to mass. I was very concerned with who goes to mass and who tithes, because I want to, like, I'm talking parish closures. That was my focus. Like, I got a little narrow here. But I mean, really, like, do we care if someone is identifying as Catholic, but you never see them in a parish? No, you care about the ones who come to church. They're the ones who are part of the living church.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so then I wanted to say, okay, like, how is that? Like, what's that going to look for a parish? So I took 600. It's actually 616,000 that die each year, and I divided that by the number of parishes. So
Hmm.
how many boomers will each parish on average lose? There's roughly 16,000 parishes. That gets you, and I'm saying roughly because I don't want to like bore your audience with the actual numbers, so I'm
Hmm.
rounding. That gets to 37 and a half boomer deaths per parish each year. Now you would think that's catastrophic. Okay, so I tried to be conservative because you're
Yeah.
going to notice if 37 people just don't show up
Hmm.
every year. Um, those are the ones that self-identify. So let's then go and look at who of those 37 who are dying each year, which ones are actually ass and pew, okay, that actually show up.
Hmm.
Only 38% of boomers who identify as Catholic go to mass weekly. That's what I care about, right? Because, like, look, if you're only going monthly, you're probably not donating. So when you die, it's not going to impact the parish.
Yeah.
Um, so I took weekly. Again, I'm giving like a lot of grace to the other side, like because
Hmm.
I could say, oh, more people are going to die than you would ever think. And I'm like, yeah, Ryan, but those people only go here and there. So I'm being very conservative here, and it's still
Hmm.
okay. So if 38% of boomers attend uh, each week, what that does, I do the math with the 37 who die every year. That gets you down to 14 weekly attending boomers die each year. I divided that then by two. Why did I do that? Because I assume it's a household. So when you're talking tithing, the money that keeps the lights on, generally speaking, a household will tithe, not like man tithes X and wife tithe. And so then if the man were to die, the wife just stops giving her. It's usually household.
Hmm.
And I'm being conservative because there are going to be some exceptions there where the man says, hey, I've got some of my tithing money that I do what I want with it. You do, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does this all mean? This means on the very conservative end that 7 households each year per parish die and the money is gone. Times that, and my entire tweet that set off this whole storm, which led to the debate, was I said, what is the church going to look like in 5 years?
Hmm.
Like, was it the saying is never plan beyond 5 years because you just can't predict it. So like only do 5-year plans.
Hmm.
I think that's a secular thing. I think most Catholics say like just live in the present moment with God,
Hmm.
right? But okay, so like in the secular world, they always like financial planners only have 5-year plans because you just
Yeah.
cannot predict reasonably
Hmm.
beyond that. So I said, what is it going to look like in 5 years? Well, 7 times 5 is 35. That is like, if you're not in a mega church, And like, let's be honest, most parishes are not mega churches.
Mhm.
Kind of what's nice about the Catholic Church is we don't build these massive. So like you're gonna feel that both emotionally when like people just aren't there anymore, and visually, like you're gonna detect that, but definitely financially. Like parishes are very strained regardless. I just like 35 in 5 years. That's
Mhm.
that's just like barely over a presidential cycle. Like every time we get like a Democrat in office, I'm like, oh, how much longer? And by the time I know it, you've got a Republican in office. I'm like, oh, okay, that's better. It flies. 4 or 5 years, that flies. So by 2030, 5 years into Pope Leo's papacy, this is really going to start. I mean, it's going to be making headlines. It's really going to start hurting because all those that tithing, unless you specify it for something, the bishop gets a cut and Rome gets a cut.
Mhm.
So Rome is gonna feel it
Mhm.
heavy, heavy. So okay, so that's one piece of the bad news puzzle is
Yeah.
just boomers, just boomers.
Mhm.
So to your point, like the Zoomers are going to come to the rescue. The problem with Zoomer data is that we don't have data for them yet. There were reportedly good. We had a reportedly good Easter in 2024. But the data is so locally collected that we don't like, it's anecdotal. So
Mhm.
I'm sure that some of the bleeding will slow, but these graphs that are going online that just show it completely reversing, I mean, Steve is putting those out, and I asked Steve where his sources were, and he cited himself to me. So
Steve
those Steve, I forget his name. It starts with an S. Like his last name starts.
Skojak,
What's
or
that?
is that someone else? Is it the Steve Skojak guy? I don't know a lot of these
He-
people, so
I
I'm not
think
I'm not
I
sure.
think that's who it is. I don't want to
Just to clarify,
besmirch
we're not 100% sure. We're not accusing
besmirch
anyone.
someone else.
Yeah.
Um, he's the one that Anthony like kind of laughed at one episode where he's like, he writes this fan fiction that like Pope Leo has to choose between the James Martin faith and the Cardinal Burke faith, and he'll be
Mhm.
stuck between that. It's what Steve was writing. He was kind of writing that. He's come out with these graphs that show like everything has magically healed in the last 2 years. And
Mhm.
me and Modern Papist is a statistician. Like we were
Yeah.
messaging. I'm like, dude, like you're better at this than me. Because it shows me completely wrong, right? So I was
Mhm.
like, look, if I need to retract some stuff, let me know. He's like, dude, he doesn't have any sources.
Mhm.
I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's playing around with AI graphs. Good for him,
Mhm.
but there isn't even collection data on the bottom source to produce that number.
Mhm.
So okay, so back to the argument. So the argument is just dealing with boomers, right? And you would
Yeah.
hope that there's a bit of a turnaround. My theory here, without evidence, is that it's going to slow. But
Mhm.
let's look at all the other generations because millennials are pretty big. Gen X is still pretty big. Gen Z will factor in. And so let's say the boom. And I even said this, like, look, if I want to be super charitable to the opponent side that like things are that they're demographically healthy, I can still show you. I said this. I can give the boomers an immortality pill that will keep them alive and tithing forever, and the Novus Ordo parishes will still decline. And here's why. So I break this down like the analogy I like to use is a sports analogy. If you want to stay above water as a parish, you need either really good offense or really good defense to outscore your opponent. If you have bad defense, you need more offense. And if you have bad offense, you need really rock solid defense. What do I mean by this in terms of parishes in the Catholic faith? Defense is your retention rate. So I'm born Catholic, I stay Catholic. What's the percent of that in a Novus Ordo parish versus a Latin Mass parish? Okay, that's defense, retention rate. How sticky is the faith? Offense is birth rate, just plain and simple. So, like, if only half of your kids are going to remain Catholic, you need to have at least three, right?
Mhm.
Because, well, no, probably more than that, right? Because, like, depending on where that third one goes, to be
Mhm.
safe, you need four.
Mhm.
Two on average will drop, but then you haven't grown. You've just, right? Like, you've just stayed.
Yeah.
So I looked into this. I was like, okay, like I want to know. So let's look at defense. This is retention rate, and this does differ by generations. Like the silent generation was a little stickier. the boomers less so, Gen X less so, millennials less so. Okay, we don't know Gen Z yet. Um, and what I did is I took, because it does get tricky. Like if you ask someone, "Hey, are you Catholic?" You're gonna get like it's gonna look like the retention rate is worse. So in
Hmm.
my original tweet, I said that the Novus Ordo had a 13% retention rate, which is abysmal. It's not that bad. And the way I got that was exactly the study you said about how for every convert, 8 leave. We just do like the division there, and that's what got me 13%. That's conversion moments. Okay. So that's like that's only measured in conversion moments. So a convert comes in, then that statistic kicks in. It needs to be layered on top of the retention rate. So I
Hmm.
recalculated the retention rate for the debate. And while it's a little better, this is the only time that like when I looked deeper into things, things got a little better. So at the Novus Ordo, and I took retention rate of weekly attending Novus Ordo Catholics to be generous, right? Because you can have a priester who gets their child baptized, and the child may claim to be Catholic up until they're 18.
Hmm.
They're more than likely going to lapse because their parents didn't take the faith seriously. That would be considered into the retention statistics. I didn't want to do that, even though I
Hmm.
should have. I mean, I really should have. But I find when I'm preparing for debates, if you grant your opponent a lot of grace, it
Hmm.
strengthens you. So that's why I didn't do it. What I did was I took what is the retention rate of a weekly, a cradle Catholic who is raised in a household that weekly attends the Novus Ordo.
Hmm.
Because I mean, obviously, you're going to have a higher retention rate of that subset than you are people who are brought into the Novus Ordo, but their parents hardly ever go.
Hmm.
It's only 32%.
So amongst, you said that's weekly Novus Ordo attendees, it's 32%.
Like, I'm a very serious Catholic and I attend the Novus Ordo.
So if you have 10 children, you would have on average
Seven,
three
seven
three
would
stay
leave.
and seven leave.
Yes. So that means, and I'll get to the offense, like what that actually means for the
Hmm.
women and what you need to be doing um, in a bit. But so that's the defense. That is terrible. Like 50% is bad, but 32% is abysmal. Not as bad as 13%, but okay. Now, what about the defense on the Latin Mass side? So I use the SSPX, and this is why I use the SSPX. They have been around the longest, so they have more cradle TLMers. I
Hmm.
can't necessarily pick a diocesan that like just came into being in 2007 with Summorum Pontificum.
This is my friend. He says the Novus Ordo rules. He digs the guitar music. He's funny because he's my friend and my personal friend, and he
Mhm.
drives 45 minutes to the TLM, but then he's a volunteer usher every other week at Espanol Novus Ordo. And so
Okay.
he's kind of a funny, unique case, but he's just a general friendly, happy guy. So just to let everyone know really quick break. If anyone super chats, I'll put it up immediately. But while we're going through all the big numbers and stuff, I'm going to wait on any of the individual regular chats, and then I will put the regular chats up. Like if it's like a small comment or something that I can just put up and we can kind of not read, just if it kind of adds something fun, then I'll put it up there. But if it's like Jerome just asked a question, Jerome, we will answer your question at the end. Chris Crash in the beginning asked some questions. There's a few people who ask questions that deserve their own answer, so we won't interrupt the flow, and then we'll answer all the questions at the end. I will stop if anyone pays money. We'll stop. We'll try to remember where we're at because you paid money, and we'll go ahead and answer that question quickly. So he was just saying hello. Okay, so you were talking about the retention rates, and you were saying SSPX was going to be your example.
Right, because they have 3 generations of cradles.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare. Like maybe you could find. I couldn't find statistics on indults because indults are so rare. So they would be the only ones that maybe had 3 generations to observe the retention rate for.
Mm-hmm.
So the SSPX has a 75% retention rate. That's fantastic. It's bad historically. I mean, like historically in Christendom, when everyone was Catholic, it'd probably be like 95%. But for this day and age, like for all the bemoaning of the 60s and how secularized everything got, dude, if you have a 75% retention rate, that's really good in this day and age. So you compare and contrast that Novus Ordo TLM. Okay, so that's on the defense side. So TLM has great defense, especially for this time, and Novus Ordo does not. We're not really surprised by that, but those are the numbers. Let's go to offense here. And this is where the stats are going to start getting a lot pithier. So I won't bore everyone with this because it's going to get quicker. We can go. I have parish closures here if you want to see how bad it is. Like Chicago lost like half their parishes in 20 years by way of example. Why? They have terrible defense up there. Outside
So
of Chicago.
defense being that their retention rate is terrible.
Yeah, their
One thing
retention.
you just talked about general retention rate. You used SPX as your example, and you used you did the general Novus Ordo. Remind me. So the general Novus Ordo, the best possible way you could find it was you said 34%,
32%, and that
32%.
is of pretty much devout Catholics. Like, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that if you're going to mass weekly, you're a pretty devout Catholic.
I think that that's the best. That's the easiest definition you could pull, and I think that's one that would nobody could be mad at is if you're going there every single week. And then SSPX is 75%. So if you have the numbers, I think to kind of make it flow better. Do you know the birth rates for the different examples?
That's what I'm
Okay.
going into. That's offense. Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, like I said, like if your defense is good, you don't have to have as many children to grow. This is where the TLM, I mean, it just continues to punch above its weight because it's going to have more children as well. And then I'll talk about you can literally just on your phone calculate if your parish is going to survive or not. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's see. The average child per woman at a Novus Ordo is 2.3 children. Okay. I think so replacement rate's 2.1, and the American average right now is really low. It's like 1.6. Okay. The average for TLM attending Catholics is 3.6. Okay. Again, we're not surprised by this, but what does that really mean in terms of like, will my parish grow or not? This is how you calculate if your offense is covering for your defense. You do 2.1, which is replacement rate, divided by your defense, your retention rate. And that shows you that whatever that number spits out is the average amount of children a woman in that parish needs to have to break even, not grow, break even. Okay, so I list a few examples. Okay, so we already heard that the Novus Ordo, the devout Novus Ordos, have a 32% retention rate. Guess how many children they need just to stay like neutral?
Okay, so 32% to break even.
It's 2.1 divided by 32%.
2.1 divided by 30%.
You're probably better at math, but
they need 20, don't they?
6.6.
Oh, I'm dumb. That's terrible math. Wow.
I used AI. I did my calculator. I had someone check it. I was 6.6. Like,
okay, yeah, because it's 1/3. Okay, that makes sense. To have 2, 1/3, 6.6. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm dumb.
So you got to think about that. Like, at your app now, those are the best, most devout types. Right now, like think about the average Novus Ordo that you've been to. Do you see an average of 6.6 children? Absolutely not. Not even close. They are the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you're a little better. Let's say, I don't know, maybe you're like a super reverent Novus Ordo and you have a 42% retention rate. You need 5 children on average. Let's say you have a 50% retention rate. Like I said earlier, you need a 4% or you need 4 children on average per woman. Like, I don't see that in any Novus Ordo. I don't see an average of, well, I see it in one. It's a Latin Novus Ordo ad orientem, kneeling, like, and they cross-pollinate with my parish too. So like, they're back and forth. I will see that. I will see an average of 4 there. And again, I'm in a healthy diocese. So what do the trads need with 3.6? I don't even know if I wrote that down.
Well, 75%, they only need like between 3 and 4 kids to break even, right?
Let Let me calculate that real quick. So
Yeah, while you do that, I'm going to put up a super chat. Johnny says, am I still devout if I go to my workplace chapel instead of my home church? Based on our definition of going weekly, as long as you're going to your workplace chapel weekly, then yes, based on the definition. I think the fact that you're even asking that question likely means that you are. If you're
watching like Catholic content on YouTube instead of Thursday Night Football, you're probably like pretty devout. So I got the number here. So for like if you go to TLM parish, you only need to have 2.8 children to maintain stable. So I mean, my parish, and we are, I think, on the higher end of this. My priest said we have an average of 5.5, and he was excited about that because, with Summorum Pontificum, like it takes a bit to recover this. A lot of older converts come in who are past childbearing years. And he was very excited when he got that news because he says, we're finally back to pre-council statistics. We're a little higher, but every TLM I go to, the average is at least 3. So my point here is that the TLMs, just based on the pure math, are going to grow. And we know this, and this isn't just theory, we know this because of the SSPX. The SSPX started with, I don't know how many chapels, but it was just Lefebvre and whoever went with him, right? Like it was very small at first in one country. Now they're on every continent and they have 700 parishes. And someone would say, oh, well, they just pulled in a bunch of people who missed the Latin Mass. Yeah, but then there was the excommunication hanging over them, which that's like, you don't get a lot of converts there because, I don't know, like it puts a lot of hesitancy. So they grew organically for the most part because those excommunications came down pretty quick. And that shows you how quickly, if you follow Catholic teaching on contraception and you're practicing a liturgy that has a good retention rate, it's a very sticky faith in the minds of the faithful, how quickly you can grow. I mean, you think about this in the ancient world, 33 AD, there's 12 Catholics. Okay. And then, some of the followers, the 2 Marys, but 12 bishops. Very small population, very, very small in some backwater like province of the Roman Empire. By the time Constantine legalizes it 300 years later, 25% of the entire empire is Catholic. That's like that is humongous. And yes, there were tons of converts that came in too, but a lot of that also had to do with, I mean, they were not the ones who were leaving their deformed children on the side of the road to die, right? That's what the pagans were doing. The Catholics were, I mean, they were adopting those children. So like they were having children, they weren't killing their children, they were adopting children. I mean, they just took over the empire by sheer biological, natural power.
Yeah.
And they weren't leaving too. Like you couldn't have gotten the Catholic faith off the ground if you had the retention rates of the current Novus Ordo parishes. It would have fizzled out and died in one generation. It has no staying power. So those were my statistics that I found, and the implications of that are crazy to think about. So I ran this. I mean, I know I said you can't predict beyond 5 years, and we've kind of talked about how like Gen Z, I think Gen Z will stem that bleeding, but it's not going to make up for it. And most Gen Z, they want to go to like Latin parishes or at least super reverend Novus Ordos.
They're self-selecting out of the churches that are going to die anyways. So
Right.
it's likely that their inflow, inevitably there will be a bandaging. Like the bleeding is coming from one very obvious place. I guess it's technically most of it. It seems like all the body except for a very small amount is bleeding, and everyone is going into that one spot that's not bleeding. So it's unlikely that all the rest of it is going to get stopped.
No, I don't think it can stop because it's not like this just picked up in the last decade. This has been since the council. There's a study done by a statistician out of Missouri. You can buy it on Amazon. It's kind of expensive though, and so you get this a lot. Thanks, bud.
Thank you, Dorian.
You get this a lot online. You see the graphs, and all the graphs are down since the council. Down, 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 down. And it's been pejoratively called the springtime decay function, because this guy statistically showed that the decline in mass attendance directly mirrors radioactive decay rates. So like there's a spiritual, scientific like slow poison release that's been introduced.
Mhm.
So my point is, like, this isn't turning around for the Novus Ordo.
Mhm.
Um, it's not something that, like, oh, just in the 21st century it's gotten bad. No, it was bad since it was introduced. We were just huge. Like, I think we were so much bigger and so much more powerful, and we had so many more children than we are at now. So I'll stop there. I don't know if you want to get to, but I can talk about the implications of this, because the implications are going to be wild.
Yeah, so let's do a little bit of discussing. So one thing I think is interesting. So if we look at we looked at the two numbers separately. We looked at the birth rates and the retention rates. But one thing we're thinking about, for example, if we assume a Novus Ordo parish, we're looking at a 33% retention rate, and then we're looking at a 2.6% birth rate.
Yes.
So that means that realistically, what is that? That means you need 2.6. I'm
You're
trying to think,
losing.
how many individual couples do you even need, actual couples, to on average make another one who would stay there, right? Like, one of the things is that when you go into bigger populations, like if your church has 100 people
Mhm.
and if 50 of them are couples who are having children, realistically, you're going to be at like 10 couples within a couple, I mean, one or two generations, right? I think
Right.
you all pretty quick.
If they stay.
Yeah. And so that's one thing. So for example, when I had that first church I started going to when I converted, there was, I think there was there was probably 3 couples max who had any children at all, and none of them were at replacement rate. So that
Mhm.
just means that unless basically a giant influx of people goes into that church, it will 100% die once those people leave. There's no
Right.
who are attending at that point either move or die. That church will that parish will inevitably die.
Right. I mean, because what you're seeing at that I mean, I'm assuming that parish was standard Novus Ordo.
Hmm.
Like, unless the people, so if you put 100 new people in,
Hmm.
kind of like what Elon talks about with immigration, like, immigration's not going to solve the problem, because those people then contracept and stop having kids as well. So, and then
Just push it back slightly.
and that's the thing, is, like, it's even harder for the church than it is for American demographics, because American demographics, like, okay, I just didn't have as many kids, but, like, I'm still here in America. Like, I have to physically move out for me to not be counted anymore. The church, you just are like, yeah, I'm not going anymore.
Hmm.
I'll watch early football NFL shows all Sunday long. Like, whatever people do when they leave the faith, like, that's what they'll do. And it's super easy to do. You don't have to move out of the country to
Yeah.
disassociate. You literally just go and do something else.
Hmm.
So, unless that retention rate is solved, all of those new people that you plucked to go into that new parish need to have 7 kids.
Hmm.
All of them. All of them have to have 7 kids. That's
Hmm.
really hard to do.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do.
Hmm.
Like, if before the council the average was 5. Oh, and by the way, the average, like, like, even when birth control wasn't popular, average children did decline a bit as we urbanized.
Hmm.
The average child per woman born, now they didn't all survive, but born in agrarian America was like 8.8. Okay.
Hmm.
But as we industrialized a bit, it fell to like 5.5. Okay.
Hmm.
So what you're asking a Novus Ordo mom to do is get really close to agrarian level replacement rates. That's a
100-year
tall.
old agrarian level of replacement
Right.
rate.
And
Yeah.
think about that. Like, in agrarian society, you were also getting married like at 16, 17, 18. Like, even most trad Catholics are like getting married 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, like in early 20s. That's
Hmm.
like best case scenario for them if they've like cross-pollinated with another parish, met a girl. Yeah, it's difficult. There's not a ton of them anymore. Like there was like 100 years ago. You could just almost everybody you knew was Catholic. Now you've got to search them out. So people are, even the modern world, are getting married later, so they're not going to have as many fertile years. So I mean, it's an impossible ask. It's impossible to do,
Hmm.
because sure, you can find one person in the Novus Ordo who will do that, but we're talking averages here. You need every single woman to have at least 7 kids on average. Okay, one has 10, the other one can have 4. Like we're
Mhm.
talking, that's just not happening. It's not even coming close. So,
Yeah.
so nothing we can do can redeem this.
Mhm.
And
But I think that
I think the retention rate is the bigger problem, is what I'm saying.
yeah. I think one thing that's interesting, my family is probably an example on the far end of the average, like worse than average. So
Okay.
my grandparents were they I want to say that they graduated high school within 1 or 2 years of 69 when the Novus Ordo was implemented.
Okay.
Then they have kids before they turn, they start having kids before they turn 30. My mom's generation, there's 5 of them. So from 2, they
So
have
they had
5.
5. So they had 5 kids.
So yeah, so they're in the late 70s to late 80s. They have 5, which is what is average right now for a TLM
Yes. Yeah.
woman. Okay, then
In my parish, the average right now is
yeah.
3.6.
Okay,
So
so that's above average. That would
yeah.
be average. A really good example. That's above average generally. Then 0 of their children stay Catholic. And then out of all of, so that's my mom's generation.
Wow.
Then out of all of those children, which is probably coming down from my grandparents down as 5, and then all of their grandchildren, let's say grandchildren or great grandchildren, we're looking at, let's say 20, 0 besides me have reverted. So we've gone like the amount of kids I would have to offset how bad my family was, right? Like just to maintain my family staying Catholic is impressive. And so I think that's a kind of a particularly bad example of how bad it can be. Obviously, some people probably had 2 kids stay, and then they had 3 kids and
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
stayed.
It's averages, so you're gonna find, but
Yeah.
like your story is probably the worst in terms of retention. But like, I know one girl from my high school. She's one of 7, and she's the only one.
Hmm.
Which actually, that's about the same because like 0 to 5, 1 to 7, like that's roughly. I mean, you can't divide 0, but that's pretty. Like they're all like it's heartbreaking, man. Like, so I was thinking about what ethnicity are you? You Hispanic, Spanish?
The family that is, so I'm mestizo, castizo, just like a mixture of different stuff. But culturally, it's a totally white, like Anglo-Irish Catholic, and
Okay.
then totally Mexican, and then that's what my mom is. And so she's both of the, that's my grandparents, and then they
Got it.
married. So it's a mixture of white and Hispanic. But that
So
was in the 50s.
yeah, and then Hispanic, that basically goes back to Spain. So I'm mostly Irish, English, and Italian.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this today, and it applies to you as well. Your DNA goes like the Catholic DNA in you probably stretches back to the 2nd century AD.
Hmm.
Likely, I mean likely, right? Um, in certain strands of that, right? Like the
Hmm.
Spanish strand would probably go to the 4th century. For me, Italian Irish, like especially on the Italian side, I might even be a 1st century. But I'm a convert now because my parents lapsed, and I presume your parents,
Yeah, my parents.
right?
Hmm.
Like the council, people will debate this. Was it the council? Was the effects of the council? Whatever. After the 1960s, thousands of years of cradle Catholicism was ruptured. So
Hmm.
that you and I, it's like Anthony's always like, "Oh, you converts." It's like, dude, by rights, I shouldn't even be here. I
Hmm.
should have been born a cradle. Like I would like my entire generation after generation, people I won't even know their names of, but they were probably fighting like the Vikings in 700 AD,
Hmm.
were Catholic, and they pass it on, and they pass it on. And then in the 60s, billions of people had that ruptured from them. And now like it's the young people who are kind of like we had to find it ourselves. But then you look back at your history and you're like, oh yeah, like I was always supposed to be this way.
Hmm.
It's wild to think about that. Like it's actually really sad to
Yeah.
like people talk like hermeneutic of continuity, hermeneutic of rupture. I'm like, what about like cradle rupture?
Hmm.
We need to popularize that. Like talk about some of the damage the council did. Like it created a bunch of orphans,
Hmm.
and we
Yeah,
had to
totally.
find our way back. Like it's really sad, man. Like
Mhm. So I think one thing worth thinking about too, someone, let me find the comment and then I'll kind of elaborate and then I'll let you elaborate. Let's see. So where did he say? Okay. Derek said the great replacement is happening in the church as well. All these historically white parishes are being transformed to Hispanic parishes. So to elaborate on that a little bit, that's from a that is true. Like I was talking with Augustine of the Valley in my video about being Mexican, interview with him like a month or two ago. And we were talking about it, and his family's super Mexican. And he lives in one of those areas of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley where everybody's Mexican. Like, he's the majority in his community. And even then, they're being replaced by Central Americans. So it happens. It's happened. Everybody is being, and so it's not, I don't necessarily sit there and like hate Mexicans for it. I mean, I like going to church with people I identify with, but like the issue then is that I heard someone, so when I was at church, we were talking about immigration after like during coffee and donuts or whatever. And one of the guys said, well, those Mexicans are fine because they bring their rosaries and they're making us more Catholic.
No,
and that's an extremely short-sighted statement. And it's also just ill-informed because the amount of Catholics who come over and are adding to the amount of, for every however many Catholics is one, what we're talking about, a reverend Catholic, a weekly mass goer who's going in and tithing is extremely low. And then their children staying is just as low as ours are. Their children become just as bad as Americans are extremely quickly.
And that's exactly what I was talking about with your particular parish, is that if you just dumped 100 people into it, the bad defense is still there. So if you look at like Hispanic immigrants, their average, and I'm not talking just all Catholic, because that's the other thing is like, I only focus my statistics on America. Latin America is abysmal post-council. Like in 20 years, Mexico's gone from like 80% Catholic to 60%. It's just in complete free fall. So one, they're not all Catholic that come over. Two, once they do come over, they're not super devout regardless, because on average, nobody is super devout in the Catholic world anymore. But if you just look at all Hispanics who come over, because people talk about the replacement rate, the defenders of saying that that's not going to happen, like if you could stop immigration at this point, is that the average Hispanic woman, her fertility drops the fastest, even faster than white liberal women. Because they're coming from like like, I don't know why, but like the poorer country you come from, the more children you have. They're now arriving into a wealthy country, and those habits, I don't know what drives this, but it takes over these new immigrants as well, and they have less kids. So even if they were all a bunch of like super devout Novus Ordos, they'd still have to fight against a 32% retention rate. They'd still have to fight this culture that gets them to contracept. So in terms of the question, like the replacement, like it's more replacement of just like whites in general in America aren't having any children. On the Catholic rate of things, I don't know the racial breakdown between TLM Novus Ordo, but you plug yourself into a TLM and you have 3+ kids, like it's going to grow. Like that's the track you got to get on, regardless of what your race is. And that will I actually did the math of when the TLM would replace the Novus Ordo if the stats hold. And it was like in 75 years. And it's not necessarily like the TLM is skyrocketing. We've got issues with building access. We can't get into buildings because of the stupid Traditionis Custodes. But like they're not leaving. They're probably going to start having masses spill out into the streets and into the fields. Like it's going to be
in a pure free market. In a pure free market where if you asked your priest to add a time and he could reasonably add it, and okay, nobody shows up to the 11 o'clock anymore, and so we're going to switch and there's only standing room for the 12 o'clock TLM, and no one goes to the 11 o'clock Novus Ordo. We're going to if you had perfect supply and demand within, I had told Antony this when we had been talking. I don't know if it was when I was on his show or when he was on mine, but I had said I don't think the Novus Ordo survives 100 to 200 years, just realistically? I mean, obviously, like you said, you can't really plan further than 5 years. And I do agree. I think that's a good rough estimate just because you don't know what's going to happen as far as
Right.
big changes and stuff like that. But just the numbers don't make any sense. And so
And and the numbers have been running for 60 years. So we
Mhm,
can at least realistically say, like, if things hold the way they are,
mhm,
this particular way of worship just doesn't have the retention power
mhm,
unless you're in like 1930s Germany where like what Mustache Man was handing out medals for women with like 12 children, but like you got a medal for that because that was so absurdly difficult to do. There's just no way we can get it's not salvageable. It won't solve itself.
mhm,
So even if the TLM like didn't exist, eventually the Novus Ordo would die out on its own.
mhm,
I ran projection numbers and it showed that by 2100, 2096 specifically, but that just depends on your base that you're plugging into these models. Roughly 2100, you'd have more TLMs than Novus Ordos.
mhm,
Now, the implications of all this is you can forget that projection because it's highly speculative. But with each passing year, the people who want the TLM, I mean, that's kind of what we're in a battle with now with the current pontiff is like, hey, can you like reverse what Pope Francis did? Um, we're at our weakest point today. We're at our weakest point yesterday. We just continue to grow stronger because we have the numbers and we don't have the money yet because it's all you know clogged up with the boomers. But like seriously, in 10 years, that's going to be gone.
mhm,
If Rome was forward thinking, they would already start kind of giving this off ramp of like, okay, let's lose. I mean, that's what Benedict. I don't know if he was doing this intentionally, but it's what happened was it was just a graceful live and let live so that, when this resource dries up of Novus Ordo boomers, you've got something to kind of inherit it. And that's actually the thing I'm most concerned about is the loss of buildings. I don't care if they're these ugly 70s buildings they built, but like we are selling off like historic and beautiful buildings because for many reasons, but one of the biggest and most tragic reasons is that we have Traditionis Custodes in place, which is it's putting a cap on something that's growing exponentially.
mhm. Yeah.
So we're just going to lose buildings. And when this is all done, whenever Rome finally wakes up, they're going to look around and see like Muslims and atheists inhabiting things that our ancestors, you know, poured their blood, sweat, and tears into. And we're going
Mhm,
to have to like reconquista like no other.
mhm,
So like you've got to damage mitigate here because you don't want to have a harder reconquista.
mhm,
You want to like can we at least stop now and kind of start gaining some ground? But no, Rome's not going to let us. I mean,
mhm,
outside the SSPX is just like I don't care what you say. We're going to keep
mhm,
doing this. Outside of the SSPX, we are capped. But even with that cap, the Novus Ordo is dying at such an incredible rate. Just on your regular, like when we talk retention rates, that's like the people who are 18, right? Like, okay, now that I've moved out of my parents' house, am I going to remain?
mhm,
And am I going to have children in accordance with the faith?
mhm,
That doesn't even account for the boomers. Like the boomers are set; they're not fertile anymore. Obviously, they're all going to die. That's just like a huge chunk that you just take off the board.
mhm,
You don't have anything to come through on the back end to help.
mhm,
So this is going to get. So my point is like the whole debate now that's going on. I think Avoiding Babylon is currently warring with Chris Jackson over here. I don't know where I fall on this because we just get more powerful kind of under the radar the more children we have.
Give me
The
one quick second. You
Yep.
can talk and maybe just entertain everyone. I just have to run to the bathroom really.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, I guess I'll fill in and finish my thought. Um, yeah, so the debate that's going on now, I guess, in Trad Inc. I don't even know what Trad Inc. is, um, but I'm seeing these debates go on online. Is that like, do we raise a fuss with Rome to the same degree we did with Pope Francis, or do we kind of cool it? I think it kind of depends on what your aim is. Um, and obviously, like if there's super heretical things coming out, I think everybody's got to talk about it regardless. If it's not, and it's, there's degrees of this, and if it's more on a mid to low degree, how much do we want to start chirping at Rome? The only reason I say that is because with each passing year, traditionalists get more and more powerful because we have more kids. The kids stay, the kids have more kids. It's an exponential demographic time bomb that's going to blow up on the modernists in their face. And once we reach an apex where we can't, like right now, we just don't have the muscle to get our way. That's why everyone's looking to Leo. Like, hey, please help us. Please help us. We don't have the muscle yet. When the boomer money goes, and the boomers are super tied to the Novus Ordo, when the boomer money goes and their devotion to the Novus Ordo goes, there's no more muscle on that end. Then here come the trads with their like 8 children, and only one of them's going to leave the faith. Now they've got the money. Now they're the future. So every year that goes by, we become more and more powerful. And the question becomes then, when do we use the muscle? Because you don't want to the people on the like, let's be quiet and play nice for a bit. I think the only justification for that, and again, this is like mild to low level issues. Like obviously, if the Pope says Jesus didn't rise from the dead, that's now dogma. We have to like go crazy and say that's absurd, that's heresy. Repent. But in these mid-level fights, there's this argument that maybe we shouldn't be squawking all the time. And if your goal there is to give another generation a chance to produce more Catholics so we get more muscle, and then we go for it, I could understand that argument. But that's my point with this is all the implications of these statistics is that any way you slice it, trads are just becoming more and more powerful. And it doesn't feel like it right now because Rome's kind of in this last-ditch effort to crush us. But there is they are not dumb. A lot of people look at this and are like, why doesn't Rome understand? Why wouldn't they want to help out the Latin Mass people? Like, that's the future. Like, why would you want to crush that? They know. And that's the reason Traditionis Custodes was issued, is because they feared us. And they wanted to put a cap on it. And they feared us because they knew that we would eventually overtake whatever pet project they launched in the 60s that clearly isn't working out. So I don't know. I don't know how we go from there in terms of like the strategy on the talking points. I'm very new to this space, so I won't even offer an opinion. But we just get more and we have more and more leverage as we go on. And that's if you need a white pill, because this is black pill, but the white pill really is that like each year we get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really good.
I think that the biggest, you have to trust. The issue is that I guess like the promise that the church has would mean that it technically like it could literally lose almost everything and it would still technically not be proven wrong. But like, that's not like that's the world we want to live in. Like, you could get Henry VIII and you lose all your property. And, the theological claims are not proven incorrect, but that still means that life really sucks for everyone. And I think that practical perspective, as things close, I think that one of the things is that what you really want to avoid, you see it somewhat in America, you see it especially in England, is having your local cathedral being sold and turned into a bookstore or a bar or a nightclub or getting turned into a mosque. And obviously we don't have the Arab issue or the Muslim issue that they have quite yet. And we have enough land here that we could, they'll likely just want to build. Right. But, you don't want to go see that those buildings being turned into that. And one of the advantages of the more free-flowing Pope Benedict free market kind, for lack of a better term, option was that if something like that happened, you could probably find a community or a priest who is willing to go, and at least you had a higher likelihood of going and, taking that over. In a diocese where they've banned it, you don't have the option to go and do that. There's nobody who has the rights to go and do that. And so you pretty much have to rely on the SSPX. I think what that'll do though, is that will give them, assuming they have their finances in order. I think, I want to say the SSPX recently surpassed the Jesuits and they're the biggest, institution in the church. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're going to see them continue to explode. Right. And so I think that, and because it doesn't seem to me that the indult communities or whatever you want to call them, they don't seem to be quite as aggressive as far as really, really, really moving the way, probably because they don't have the level of freedom the SSPX does. And I'm not going to get into the theological conclusions drawn around the SSPX, and I just appreciate the fact that because of them, a lot of people can go to the the TLM.
Right. Well, I was talking to Modern Papists last night about that. I'm like, I actually think the SSPX, because they're irregular, right? Nobody knows what to do with them. I think this is my theory. I've not talked to people about this, so that it's take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, I actually think the SSPX probably likes being irregular. Everyone's like, oh, when are they going to normalize with Rome? I'm like, well, as soon as you normalize with Rome fully, then you've got to kind of toe the line like the Institute of Christ the King and the FSSP does. Like the FSSP is always just waiting to be crushed, which is terrible. The SSPX is like, dude, you guys like excommunicated our bishops. You think like we won't just go back to like we've been there, done that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, and it's the same with diocesan TLMs. A lot of bishops, like we get the bad news. A lot of bishops just said, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. But they all know, like, look, if Rome really pressured that bishop, most would cave. Or if they didn't, they'd get Strickland and just remove him. So everybody is like, I mean, it's a super abusive situation. What I think is, I had a buddy who went on the Chartres pilgrimage, and I don't know if you followed the like TLM drama there, but like one of the bishops in I don't know all the dioceses in France, but it starts in Paris, wouldn't let them go into this like larger building, larger church for the initial mass. So they all went to this like tiny little, like, I mean, you're talking like tens of thousands of pilgrims were just lined up on the street miles away from this tiny little like shack of a church that could say the extraordinary form. Like, I think that will be the optics. If Leo doesn't lift Traditionis Custodes, that will be the optics that and this is what gets me to the Kennedy Hall thing. Like, I love history and I love like dramatic history. Look at the dramatic, like, picture this. Leo's in his 15th year. He's not really mobile anymore. He's walking with a cane. So many of his generation have died, and the parishes, like the headlines all over CNN, the Wall Street Journal, are just more parishes closed, more parishes closed. And on the flip side, you have pictures of these veiled women with like 6 or 7 kids and their husbands in suit and ties kneeling on the pavement a mile away from the only parish that's allowed in that diocese to have the extraordinary form. And it's raining, but they're still there and they're sticking it out. The optics of that are going to be so embarrassing for Rome. I can almost imagine the moment, whether it's unfortunately with the death of the current pontiff or he comes to his senses and lifts Traditionis Custodes. It's like the stadium gates when they open for like the Super Bowl, and you've got those people like Black Friday sale, like everyone's just going to rush in to these parishes because I mean, like my parish, we've had 5 funerals to like 175 baptisms since my priest came in 2020, so 5 years. Where are these people going to go? Like my priest already has to get special permission from the bishop to offer. I think priests are only allowed to offer 2 masses on a Sunday without permission, just to keep them like from passing out with fatigue. He has special permission to do 3. That's where we're at now. That's in 5 years. It's going to spill over into the streets, and if Rome doesn't open up the doors to other parishes, I mean, like, just imagine the trad family like walking past the giant, beautiful church that's dead empty to go to the little SSPX shack next to it. It's gonna be so embarrassing and inexcusable and so difficult. Like, you won't be able to explain it away.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. One of the things is that I think the more freedom they offered, I actually think it would make it grow even faster, not just because it offers a lower barrier, so people who are less committed will go in. But one of the things is people always say, people will say, well, the TLM Catholics do this, and, look at how much worse the Novus Ordos are. And they'll say, well, you're looking at a self-selecting group. And that is fair. You're looking at a group who selects out and makes the numbers in the Novus Ordo worse. But one of the things is, like, let's use Rob from Avoiding Babylon as an example. He is, for lack of a better term, just from the outside, someone who's doing everything correctly. And he's driving 2 hours, right?
Right.
And so when if he gets something right next to him, all of a sudden he doesn't have to drive that distance. And then he is the example to a huge slew of new people as well, right?
Yeah.
And it would only take a couple families like doing what he's doing, one, just to become sustainable on their own, like
Right.
because their numbers are so good that it would, it might take 3 generations before they look really big from the outside, but just from a numbers perspective, inevitably they will become big. And all of a sudden you have that in more areas. And so I think that I have faith that Pope Leo will free it up sooner rather than later. That's just, if I had to make a
I
bet,
hope
that's what my
I
bet
hope
would
you're
be.
right, man. I hope you're right.
Yeah. And so, it's not everyone's as, I guess, enthusiastic, or not enthusiastic as a white pilled. But so I think that there's a lot to think about and consider. And I think that it's kind of black pilling to see the numbers in the Novus Ordo, and because you don't want, but you don't want all the boomers to leave, and all the couple people that are left to lose their local church. You don't want all these people to die and not have enough children or not have any children. That's sad. To a certain extent, you kind of look at it, especially with the boomers, and you go, well, death is natural. They're going to die anyways.
Mhm.
So there's not necessarily something that's lost by that parish closing, except for the fact that,
The
you know,
parish. Yeah,
the
the
parish.
parish closing. It's funny. I asked some of my close friends. I'm like, is it wrong to like want the Novus Ordo parishes to close? And they're like, if Rome, and this was and I was surprised by the answer because they're less like tratty, I guess, than me. I've kind of gotten fed up with it all. So, and they said no, because if Rome won't course correct, it's the only way things get healed.
Mhm.
Like there has to be a death before a resurrection type theme. Anthony, when I was on Avoiding Babylon, Anthony said like we should hope for this. This actually, he was. I don't know if I would like go that far, but he went that far and said like, yeah, we should just hope for this because it can't exist the way it's currently practiced.
Mhm.
I just one quick point to your mention on like Rob and like how it would be really small at first and then 3 generations get bigger. I actually got into a debate with some guy who's like super anti like Latin Mass on
Mhm.
Twitter, and he was from Arizona, and he said, "Oh, like I know that like the Latin Mass doesn't have good retention because the SSPX down here is still only one building, and it started in the 70s. Like it was one of the first in America." So I just Googled it because there's only one SSPX in his region.
Mhm.
Um, the SSPX down there started with 7 families.
Mhm.
They now have 300 parishioners, and while they only have one building, they're under a massive expansion project. And they're
Mhm.
having a school, and they're putting like I think like a seminary. Like they're just blowing up.
Mhm.
Like from 1970, that's 3 generations.
Mhm.
That's how fast you can go from 7 to 300. That's
Mhm.
incredible.
Well, even in Wyoming where I visited, there's a Ukrainian church there,
Mhm.
and it was started by one family. They're
Wow.
Ukrainian Catholic, and there's the grandpa, and then I think that he has 3 kids who have families there, and then they all are on the, somewhere between 3 and 5 kids, his
Mhm.
3 kids. And then, they're all growing, like the oldest, I would guess, out of that second generation is like the oldest out of his children, I would say, are probably in their early 30s. So they're, and then I think that they took away some of the more serious Catholics from the local Novus Ordo, but
Right.
the most of the kids are from this one family,
Yeah.
and that parish has been around for like 2 or 3 years. And so one of the things is, I think that most people are not capable of grasping like exponential growth,
Yeah.
as a 30% growth for 10 is 13, and then it's still just 3, it's up to 16, and it takes a while before you get up to 4 per year, and then it gets up to 4.5, and then all of a sudden, it's kind of like people don't understand why they need to invest at a young age, because they don't, right? And so it really does take a few decades before the growth becomes super, super noticeable. And it just takes time. Everything takes a longer time to start, for the churches to finance, for them to go look for a second location. It's a
Mhm.
lot easier for someone to get their third or fourth location in a state than it is for them to get their first. So I think all of the startup, and for all those reasons, it might look slow. But yeah, I think that the numbers are on our side. And literally one of the only things that we have from a generational perspective is time.
Yes, the only critique I ever hear from these arguments is, and it's always from like very uncharitable people who are like literally think the church started in 1969. say you guys are, they'll say one or two things. You guys are weird, and or you guys are so small you're irrelevant. I'm like, it does not matter how small we are. It
Hmm.
matters your growth projection.
Hmm.
It literally doesn't matter. And that's like my point with the first century Christians. They were the smallest the church has ever been. And within 300 years, they were 25% of the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
Size doesn't matter at all. It's your growth projection. And then on the same side, it's this like 98% of parishes are the Novus Ordo. And I'm telling you, I have chart after chart of parish closures in dioceses. Like 30% of parishes are closing on the low end.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter how big you are,
Hmm.
you'll collapse. You have to have healthy metrics.
Yeah. And I think it's a shame that it feels adversarial in this way because it really shouldn't be. If I could snap my fingers and make every woman or every family at the Novus Ordo have the capability and make them want to have an extra 3 kids, and for all of them to be able to have every single one of their kids stay Catholic, I'd snap my fingers and I'd do it, meaning like just because it's an objective moral good, right?
Right.
But like it's I think, and one thing is, a lot of people hearing us say this, they hear you describe things as they are, and they seem to think that you're like fantasizing or gloating. And one of the things is that a lot of times just describing objectively how things are kind of hurts people's feelings, and they don't like to hear it. And you can there's no gloating in people's children losing their salvation and leaving the church. There's no gloating in people breaking the church's rules and committing mortal sin by contracepting, all that kind
Right.
of stuff.
I mean, I think probably the heaviest part of this podcast was when I talked about you and I having Catholic DNA that was shattered.
Hmm.
Um, the only quote, if someone were to perceive a gloat, which I am not, my pure intentions and emotions behind this is I'm very frustrated and angry at the people. This is the exact reason why I ended up doing the debate. Are accounts like Al Carbo, which say everything is fine.
Hmm.
Um, and I came to the realization that because I basically just came onto the Catholic scene through Twitter and just either commenting, sharing thoughts, and then sometimes debating people on Twitter. And I came to the conclusion that most Catholics will never be convinced that something needs to change. I mean, Bishop Barron, to his credit, I know a lot of people have issues with some of his statements. He does not dispute the numbers. The whole one Catholic convert every 8, that came from him.
Hmm.
That's why he launched his word on fire. Like he knows that this is a problem,
Hmm.
but he won't go. He'll never touch anything in the reforms of Vatican II.
Hmm.
I'm just like, at the end of the day, like, and that's how I end a lot of my debates with some of these people. I'm like, you're just gonna have to learn the hard way.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, like that's where my emotion comes out. Is like I'm incredibly frustrated. Look, it's so obvious. You could send in like consultants, pay them 800 an hour, like the top consultants from KPMG, Ernst and Young, like liberal atheist consultants, and
Hmm.
they would literally look at the state of the church and be like, "This is so obvious. You have one product that sells." Like if you're putting this in like super secular terms, it'd be like
Yeah,
your
if this
strategy.
was customer acquisition, they would be telling you that you're completely screwed.
Yeah, and they'd say your strategy is completely the inverse. Like, why aren't you investing in your one product that sells and you're continuing to pump all your energy into salvaging a product that for 60 years hasn't flown off the shelf once?
Hmm.
Like, you're not building new stores to sell this. You're closing stores down because they have this product on the shelf. It's absurd. Like I talk to my relatives who are not in the faith at all, and I explain it to them, not with my bias, just like this thing's growing, this thing has never grown, and Rome loves this thing and they hate this thing. And like, why would they do that?
Hmm.
And that's where things kind of get dark because it's like, because they're like, oh, do they just not know? I'm like, no, they know.
Hmm.
They know.
Yeah.
So that's where my frustration comes out. I'm not gloating over it, but it does kind of get like for example, if the Latin Mass was free today, I would never crusade to close a Novus Ordo
Hmm.
ever. I
Hmm.
actually think a lot of boomers may lose their salvation because they're so attached to that mass. But like if the boomers got their mass, why can't others get theirs? Right.
Yeah.
So it's not adversarial. It's us kind of fighting for our heritage to be
Hmm.
recognized and permitted. And yes, to have a lasting church because it just the numbers will not get you there with the Novus Ordo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we don't agree with Derek. He's a sedative contest, so, or at least based on his comments. But he's allowed to have his opinion. Although I guess no religious liberty, so he's technically not kind of allowed to have his opinion. Ave Christus Rex to Johnny. I'm not gonna do a formal prayer or anything because I don't want to make myself look like some kind of authority. I think that we kind of made our point as well as we can. If anyone wants to talk about it anymore, I'm willing to talk about it. Ryan's willing to talk about it. You can hit up both of us on X. Ryan's X and my X are both in the description. My Buy Me a Coffee is in the description, or you can just leave money here on YouTube. You can become a member if you want to support me. Thank you to everyone who did that. Thank you to Alex and to Johnny for leaving super chats. And then Ryan just started his own show. Do you want to tell us about that really quick, so anyone who wants to see some more of you can look into that?
Sure. And I got to thank you because I wasn't sure if I was going to start my show, but I've gotten some invites, and then you invited me. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to make at least a couple videos so that people can go there. But I do plan to make more than a couple videos. But you were the catalyst to get me.
Glad to hear that.
So thank you for that. My channel is called Pre-Conciliar Radio, and the topics will be as the name implies. I'm going to really focus on the way the church was pre-council. That's the way I live my life. I think if Rome can't figure out what Vatican II was, that's above my pay grade. So I just stick to everything before that. And I'm going to make content generally around that. And I think my next video will be just me kind of talking in the camera about what we talked about today, because people are going to want to watch it on your channel. And maybe they can get like 20 minutes of me just going through it as well. So that's where I'm at. Would appreciate the support. I'm a baby YouTuber. I have no idea what I'm doing. I recorded my first show and realized the mic was off for an hour and a half. So I am really raw on this, but I appreciate anyone who does subscribe or catch a listen.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you guys next week for... Who are we talking to next week? I don't remember. I'll post it on X. I don't remember who we're talking to next week, but it's someone. Have a good one. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, guys.